Launch control, this is Houston. We are go for launch.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Listen all you mother...
It's TalkBack Weekend with Chris X.
What we need right now is a clear message to the people of this country. This message must be read in every newspaper, heard on every radio, seen on every television. This message must resound throughout the entire interlink.
And now your host,
I believe this is going to be our finest hour.
Chris X.
Good evening and welcome to TalkBack Weekend. I am Chris X, broadcasting live from Studio X, as we do here every Saturday night. We come bearing a gift beyond price that's almost free, ladies and gentlemen. We bring you the spirit of talk radio. Tonight we have a very special guest here. He's been kind enough to join us for the first couple of segments. We're going to be talking with retired Colonel and former U.S. Congressman Allen West. Now, I know the vast majority of our listeners to this program know exactly who the Colonel is, and the congressman and some of the things he's been doing, fighting on behalf of not only his constituency, but the great people of this country. So we're honored and blessed to have Congressman Allen West joining us. He's going to be here for a couple of segments, and then, of course, as always, we will get to your phone calls. So sit back, relax for a couple of segments as we have a conversation with U.S. Congressman Allen West. Congressman West, thank you so much for taking the time and talking with us this evening.
Well, thanks so much, Chris. And I tell you what, anytime you can tune in and hear someone quote the lyrics from Rush and Spirit of the Radio, I know I'm on the right show.
Very nice. Yeah, you're the first one to really point that out. So that puts you about 2 notches ahead of everyone. And I talked to Ted Nugent last week, and he didn't even catch that. So you already got bonus points here on TalkBack Weekend, Colonel West. I appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, well, let's get into this. I know it's been a very busy week for you, and once again, we appreciate you taking the time and talking with us. First and foremost, we're going to talk about the Benghazi terror attack and the hearings going on. But before we get to this, I know since your days of serving in Congress, and of course you served the military in this country very well, you're working with NextGeneration.tv, and what are some of the things that you're working on these days?
Well, NextGeneration.tv falls under PJ Media. And the great thing is, I'm sitting here in our brand new office looking out at Union Station. So PJ Media is headquartered out at L.A., but now we have an East Coast base here at 500 North Capitol. So I'm excited about being here on the ground to be able to cover all the critical issues that are facing our next generation, our young people, but also the things that we need to make sure, my generation and the previous generation, that we pass on a better America to that next generation. So that's our whole focus here, is to really, drill down on these issues, try to crystallize it, and make it so clear to the young people and to all generations of Americans.
Well, this is something you've done quite well for many years now, serving not only your country, but the people of this country through Congress and through the military. And as always, we thank you for your service, and I'm glad to see you're continuing. The last thing I want to see is somebody that represents the people as well as you do kind of go off into this. I know you could run off into the sunset and not do this stuff, but you've got the heart of a lion, if you will, and I'm glad to see you're doing this. Let's get right into this. I know they're having the hearings earlier this week with the Benghazi terror attack, and I think it's a little bit late, but it's better late than never. What do you think about what's going on with the administration story, the deception we've seen, and the doctoring of the info?
Well, without a doubt, it's interesting how the people in the administration on the Democrat side continue to say that we're playing politics with this. Well, they're the ones that mastered that trick. The fact that they kept this hidden during the 2012 election cycle so that it was not really brought up, and the media has done a good job of not paying attention to it whatsoever. This is, a scandal to beat all scandals. When I think about, Richard Nixon basically resigned over breaking and entering, a little, third degree misdemeanor maybe. Now we're talking about the loss of life of an ambassador, 2 former Navy SEALs who lost their life while engaged in mortal combat. This cannot be the new normal. When you look at what happened in Benghazi, the very first thing you have to ask yourself, why was, our ambassador moving on or about, September 11th, the 11th anniversary thereof, into an area, eastern Libya, where there are black al-Qaeda flags that fly all over the place, to include right there in Benghazi. So why did we put an ambassador to risk in the first place? It didn't have the adequate security. We know it's not about funding. There have been previous attacks. The Red Cross had pulled out. the British ambassador had been attacked in one of his motorcades, and we now know that we did have forces that could have gone into Benghazi to help and assist those two former Navy SEALs. Who gave the order to stand down? When you have a combatant commander, which is what the commander of AFRICOM, General Carter Ham, is, there are not too many people that can tell him to stand down. And I know General Carter Ham from my time in the military. He's not the kind of guy that will leave, anyone hanging out to dry in a combat situation. And then we know about the changing of the talking points memo that referred back to a terrorist attack, specifically said which terrorist group it was with an affiliation to Al-Qaeda. And then we had someone come out and tell us it was about a video on 5 different Sunday talk shows. This is all about protecting the person that's in the White House, and I think even more so, it's about protecting the person that someone feels is entitled to be the next president.
And as we look at this, you're absolutely right. This occurred, very soon before the re-election of President Obama, and these talking points, they came out and said it was about this video that this guy who's still in jail, I guess, on supposedly unrelated charges, and of course, very quickly we learned that it had nothing to do with this video. Now we have multiple people who come out and said they knew from the get-go this was a terrorist attack by Al-Qaeda, yet the administration still pushed this story about this video. You think it was directly because they were looking to get reelected and it just didn't look well on the global contingency operation, if you will?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you're talking about overseas contingency operations and, the president is going around saying, Osama bin Laden is dead, Al-Qaeda is on the run, the last thing you need to have is you just lost an ambassador to a group, Ansar al-Sharia, that is linked to Al-Qaeda. And, oh, by the way, one of the founding members of Ansar al-Sharia was a detainee at Guantanamo Bay who was released. That's not the good news story that you want to have out there, because everyone knew that the economy was in the tank. Everyone knew that the job situation was horrific. Now you want to have the one thing that the president is trying to tout, that he's a tough guy on foreign policy, national security, blow up in his face. No, you could not have that happen. So we need to have a select committee, because when you understand the intricacies and the level of detail we need to get into, you can't do it across 5 different committees of jurisdiction in the House. We need to have that select committee that needs to have subpoena power so that we can bring the right people in. And we're only talking about 90 days. And this should not cost American people anything extra, because you already have House staff and individuals that are there. You already have the facilities that are there. But this is what needs to happen. You know what? If we could take the time to have the stupid committee, the super committee that failed to do anything, I think we can take the time to have a select committee on Benghazi.
Yeah, I think that would be the very least that we could do, considering, like you said, 4 Americans died, including an ambassador, a couple of Navy SEALs or former Navy SEAls, and we've got the Secretary of State saying, "What does it matter?" Well, it matters a lot to America and our security. Not only do, in my personal opinion, I believe there's something criminal that went on here, and I hope they follow all the way through. I'm glad CBS and, of course, Fox News and people like yourself have stayed on this, but the way the media has addressed this is almost criminal, in my opinion.
Well, it is criminal, and you just mentioned CBS, but understand there's only one person at CBS looking into this, and that's Cheryl Atkinson. And the word on the street is that she's catching a lot of flack from the big wigs at CBS. There's a sense of censorship and collusion between, the mainstream media and this White House. We know that there were people that were in Walter Reed Military Medical Center that no one has heard from, no one has had any access to. We know that you've seen pretty much a complete blackout. As a matter of fact, there have been some people trying to totally dismiss, this whole thing with Benghazi from the other side. But, the interesting thing that I have to ask you, let's just flip the pancake, Chris, and imagine if this was a Republican president and a Republican administration, what do you think would be the number one story in the media right now?
Man, we saw the Plame game with Valerie Plame, and no one died in that. So when you flip the pancake, if you will, it's the double standard with the way the media. You've never heard of the vast left wing conspiracy; it's always the right wing conspiracy. So it's very sad to see this. As I'll tell you what, we're talking with retired Colonel and U.S. Congressman Allen West. We've got one more segment to go. We're coming up on a break, and you stick around for one more segment, Congressman?
Absolutely. I'm here with you.
Okay, we're talking with former U.S. Congressman Allen West. He's working with a lot of things. For those of you who are familiar with the PJ Media, of course, nextgeneration.tv. I want you to go check this out, and you can keep up to date with some of the things Congressman West is working on, and also as well as you can follow him on Facebook and all of the traditional ways. Make sure you stay in touch with what's going on, because he is staying on top of the pulse of what's happening in Washington. You're listening to Talk Back Weekend. I'm Chris X. Don't go away. We'll be right back with Allen West, and then shortly thereafter, we'll get to some of your phone calls here as well. This is Talk Back Weekend. I'm Chris X. Welcome back to Talk Back Weekend. I am Chris X, along with Congressman Allen West. He's a retired colonel with the U.S. military, and he's a former U.S. congressman based out of Florida. He's been kind enough to join us here for a couple of segments this evening, and we're going to get right into it. We're talking about the Benghazi terror attack and the hearings that are coming up, and it's been a very busy week, so I want to thank the congressman for taking the time and talking with us for a couple of segments here on Saturday night, and as always, we'll get to your phone calls here a little later in the program. Mr. West, one of the things that I did want to ask you, we talked about this, do you think anything will come from these hearings?
Well, it has to come from these hearings. Something has to, because if not, what does that say about us? What it would say, if we just brush this aside, is that losing American lives is not as near as important as, political career and political aspirations. And really, you talk about the corruption of the media and the loss of any type of credibility if they ever had it. That's something that would end up coming out of this if we don't pursue this and get the right type of answers. Something else that a lot of people are not talking about, and this occurred before we even got to Benghazi, was if you remember in August 2011 when the helicopter was shot down, they had about 22 or 23 SEAL Team 6 members. The air crew was lost of about 5, and then 3 Air Force special operators. That was called the Extortion 17 mission. And on Thursday, up at the National Press Club, the family members of some of those lost Navy SEALs and also air crew members, they had a press conference there, and they talked about the cover-up of Extortion 17. And when you go back and look at this, and I had to classify a briefing while I was still in Congress, member of the Armed Service Committee, the Taliban knew that SEAL Team 6 was going into this river valley in Wardak province. And we did not have any type of escort, armed gunships going in with them. They were not on a special operations equipped Chinook helicopter. They were on a regular CH-47, not an MH-47. There were no pre-assault fires that were done. And the family members were told that the reason there were no pre-assault fires, them going into an operation that was 3 hours old, was that they didn't want to lose the hearts and minds of the people on the ground. And it was so incredibly emotional when Karen Vaughn stood up and said, the hearts and minds of the enemy was more important than the blood of my son. And this is what we're talking about here with Benghazi. The blood of our American patriots, our soldiers, our diplomatic workers overseas in harm's way, it cannot be more important than politics up here in this, 6 or 8 square mile area called Washington, D.C. That's reprehensible. We have to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Seeing this, and we're talking about true heroes of this country. Well, these are the true heroes, and to see them get treated such as, and this goes for the 2 retired Navy SEALs that were in Benghazi that died, and of course those who serve this country. If we don't protect our people, we are literally defeating the purpose of our own democratic republic we have here, and I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm glad you're staying on these issues. Another thing, very briefly here, you do have quite a bit of experience when dealing with these radical Islamists and Al Qaeda with your time overseas. You know how these people think.
Yeah, absolutely right. But, it's not just the ones overseas. There's an incredible document that was uncovered back in 1991 during an FBI raid here in Northern Virginia. And it was the Muslim Brotherhood's strategic objective. They call it the explanatory memorandum for what they wanted to do in America and across North America. And they clearly state in this document that it is about civilizational jihad. It is about destroying the United States of America from within by our own miserable hands. And as long as we continue to have people, and as long as we continue to have an administration that looks at what happened at Fort Hood, Texas, and says it's workplace violence, that looks at a young man by the name of Carlos Bledsoe from Memphis, Tennessee, that goes to Somalia and Yemen and comes back and shoots 2 United States Army recruiters in Little Rock, Arkansas, killing one, and we don't think anything of it. As long as you have people that want to apologize for the Sarniev brothers up in Boston. As a matter of fact, I read where 2 UCLA professors said it was the fault of the United States of America for not properly assimilating them into our culture. As long as we have these useful idiots, we're going to continue to lose to this radical Islamic threat that is not just, on foreign lands. It has found its way here to the United States of America by way of the Muslim Brotherhood and many of the front organizations that they use to employ their tactics.
Yeah, and one of the things we've seen out of our president, and this could not drive me any more crazier, is the fact that he is eternally a Muslim sympathizer. And you know what? With good Muslims out there and people that are practicing a peaceful religion, I've never had a problem. But it's these radical ones, and we don't hear our president ever commending people from, say, the Jewish faith or say from Christianity. He's busy defending Islam.
Sure, you're absolutely right, and I wish that the president would show the same amount of righteous indignation that he showed over, this silly video, if you recall, when he spoke before the United Nations, as he would for the loss of 23 Navy SEALs, or the loss of an ambassador and 2 former Navy SEALs, or the fact that 43 soldiers and Army civilians were shot, 13 killed at Fort Hood, Texas. I don't see that same type of righteous indignation. As a matter of fact, we have this guy, Mikey Weinstein, that is working with the Department of Defense and meeting with the Department of Defense. And his words is that, Christians who are proselytizing, as he calls it, he's comparing that to spiritual rape. And he's saying that is equivalent to sedition and treason. If we cannot hold on to our Judeo-Christian faith, and we continue to try to accommodate and tolerate that which is intolerable, then what are we going to pass on to our next generation? I think that we will not pass on the same type of blessings and liberty that we have enjoyed here in this country.
Well, we've seen this with of course, the attack on that Israel had, where they attacked a strike in Syria about those weapons. One of the things, we've got a big, huge push for gun control in this country, and it's amazing to see certain government officials trying to take weapons out of law-abiding citizens' hands while they're currently arming the Muslim Brotherhood and these other countries with massive weapons of war. And I think it drives me a little crazy. I wanted to get your take here before we run out of time on this whole gun control movement and the legislation they've been attempting to push.
Well, the whole gun, I have a statement that says an armed person is a citizen, an unarmed person is a subject. And I believe that that's what some people want to have. And as Rahm Emanuel said, never let a good crisis go to waste. You cannot talk about gun control in America now when you have people that are dropping off, pressure cooker bombs at a Boston Marathon race. One of the things that I saw that really did disturb me was if you looked at the neighborhoods in Watertown, Massachusetts, they really looked like a patrol going down the street in Baghdad or Kandahar or, Kabul, Afghanistan, in a combat zone, and going up to the houses of Americans and asking them to come out of their houses, searching their houses. We need American citizens to be able to defend themselves, and that's a right that is guaranteed in the Second Amendment. And I think Jefferson put it very clearly. When the citizens fear the government, it is tyranny. When the government fears the people, there is liberty.
Well, I'll tell you this, Congressman West, if I've got to depend on the same people that, say, Ambassador Chris Stevens and some of these other people had to depend on for protection, I think I would rather arm myself, and I'm completely in agreement with you. Congressman Allen West, we're literally out of time. I want to thank you so much for coming and talking with us today. Would you be willing to come back in the future and talk with us again?
Absolutely. Anytime you want me, Chris.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate all that you're doing for us, and please keep up the good work, and we hope to hear from you soon.
I will. Thanks. Have a great evening.
Thank you. You too. That's all of our time for the first 2 segments here on TalkBack Weekend. I'm Chris X. You want to get lined up for the next segment? Give us a call, 866-606-TALK. That is 866-606-8255. We'll be right back with more TalkBack Weekend.